Hi there, YouTube. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. Let's get our friends over in Twitch in on the scene because that's where we do the recording, don't you know? Everybody, welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. It is the 4th of April, 2024, 040424. That's a fair number of fours. A higher than average number of fours. Let me just zoom out just a tiny little bit here. For those of you who are playing the T-shirt game, this is one of my favorite things ever. By the way, this is interesting. See this? So I was at the grocery store earlier with my lovely wife, and we were checking out, and somebody said, "What's your, I don't know if I understand the meaning of your T-shirt." And I said, "Well, I just think sometimes we have a tendency to overthink things, and." I'm in Los Angeles, so I'm not going to really elaborate what I mean by that. He says, "Well, I disagree." I said, "Well, you're certainly welcome to do that." But here's what I suddenly realized. I actually am kind of proud of this. This little statement here can be rephrased another way. And give me a second, and I will show you what I mean. I just had this thought just not long after the guy said, I don't agree with your T-shirt. I said, well, that's dandy. And this is why we live in America. Hang on. So what's another way of saying too many Spocks and not enough Kirks, or maybe more precisely, too many Spocks, not enough Kirks is another way of saying this. Stay with me here, because you tune in for your deep thoughts, and that's what you're going to get, by God. Too many Spocks, not enough Kirks. Or, if you prefer, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep no more, and by sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that the flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we've shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of such a long life, for who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that the patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin, in other words. Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than to fly off to others that we know not of. And here comes too many Spocks, not enough Kirks. Thus conscience doth make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sickly overed with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment with this regard for their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. It's kind of cool that enterprises of great pith and moment are in there. Too many Spocks, not enough Kirks. The native hue of resolution, that would be the gold, Captain James T. Kirk of Starship Enterprise. The hue of resolution is sickly overed with the pale cast of thought. That'd be Mr. Spock. So what Hamlet is saying and what Shakespeare is saying is you can get to the point where you can think yourself out of taking any kind of action, and that the more you chew it over, the less likely you are to do it. And that is essentially what this shirt says. Too many Spocks, not enough Kirks. Too much talking, too much thinking, too much debating, not enough decision making, not enough action. And enterprises of great pith and moment are in there as well. So I just had that thought. That's what appealed to me about this, about the statement in the first place. Too many Spocks, not enough Kirks. Too many people talking, thinking. Not that there's not a place for that. But comes a time when you got to make a decision and take some action. And there seems to be a real shortage of that in our world today, seems to me, on many occasions. Of course, that's just my take on things, but I was tickled when I made that connection in the supermarket today. Yeah, too many Obamas, not enough Trump, says Road Rider. Exactly. It's it's true. This is one of the things that I've noticed. We're come back to body cam videos because this is really about the state of America now. This is why these things are so interesting to me. They certainly show you the dark side of life, and they show you what police have to put up with. They have changed so many minds from people who thought that the police were these brutal monsters, and once we get body cam videos on them, we'll hate them even more, to entire armies of people basically saying, my God, I don't know how they do it. I don't have the patience for it. But one of the things that you see commonly through these these emotional meltdowns of adult children, which is the domestic front, which is that's the part of the things to come triad, the cities, the border, and the suburbs. That's the part that we're going to have to deal with most directly. And one of the things that you'll watch these people do, they learned how to do it when they were 4. All of these adult meltdowns, you're under arrest. No, I'm not. Well, you're going to do this. No, I'm not. Well, you have to put away your vape. I'll get in the car if you put away the vape. This bargaining. What they want to do is they want to keep talking about it. That's what the strategy is, because when you see these people getting arrested and confronted with an immovable no, let me go. No, let me go. No, let me go. No, you're under arrest. I'm not under arrest. I'm not going to jail. Can't do jail. What they want to do, what they're trained to do, what their only course of action is to keep talking. And you would think that you see a lot of comments on these things of people saying, this person keeps saying, let me go, let me go, let me go. Is it, do you think you're suddenly going to convince the officer to let you go? No, but you think that you can wear him down, and that's really what they learned. That's what children who've never been disciplined learned. If you make enough noise, you will eventually get what you want. If you have enough of a temper tantrum, you may make your parents angry at first, and they may get very, huffy and so on, pissy about it. But as long as you keep screaming and kicking your feet, eventually they will buy you the toy to get you to shut up. And that's why these people, these grown adults who act like, who have the emotional makeup of 4-year-old children, that's why they have to keep talking. And it's a form of control. I'm watching these things now with a real sharp eye, just an experienced eye. I'm watching this, and I'm watching these people doing everything they can to maintain control, or at least some sense of control. Every little thing is about them regaining some kind of sense of control. Can never admit they're wrong. They can never admit that they made a mistake. They're always trying to lawyer their way out of the situation. One of the most common things that is that you see a lot of is these people being put in jail and be, taken out of their cars and off in the paddy wagon SUV, and they're saying, you can't arrest me. You didn't read me my rights. You didn't read me my rights. It's like the YouTube lawyer has struck. He's found the loophole. You can't arrest me. You didn't read me my rights. This whole arrest is illegal. You have to let me go. You have to let me go. You didn't read me my rights. It's like, they don't have to read you your rights unless they're going to question you. And if they're not going to question you, they don't have to read you your rights. They can ask direct questions about, are you the owner of this vehicle? That kind of thing. But if they start asking about, details of an investigation, then they got to Mirandize the people. But I can't tell you how many times these people who know next to nothing about how this works have said, you can't arrest me, you didn't read me my rights. Or as they're being taken to jail, you didn't read me my rights, so this whole thing's going to end up, getting thrown out in court, and you're doing it. So I think it's really repulsive to me, especially with many of these cases where you can just tell that these people just despise America. They've been raised to hate America. They hate everything about America. And the second they get in trouble, I know my rights. I know my rights. I know my rights. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. You know, and start calling police officers, just, piss off, you bitch. Just, they know their rights. They don't know their rights, number one. And number two, they certainly don't know their responsibilities. And these things are concomitant. They go together. Watching these things, I realized the thing that they all have in common, really, and it's not just Gen Z, obviously, and it needs to be said, and this is a big issue. Needless to say, no one is putting up videos of people who get pulled over for a traffic violation and then say, "I'm sorry, officer, it was entirely my fault. I beg your pardon. Will you get out of the car, please, sir?" Absolutely. No one's posting those. So I understand the selection bias there. But the one thing that these things all have in common, and this to me is the threat. This is the domestic threat in a nutshell, because this applies to some of the criminals I've seen coming over the border. This applies to the criminals in the inner cities, and it applies to these rich white liberal children who don't believe that the law is anything other than a boomer invention, and that is they have no control over their emotions. And so this is what I was thinking about on the way in today in the last couple of hours, that essentially is what civilization is. Civilization is the ability to control your emotions. And they don't know how. And if you can't control your emotions, you can't live in a free society. Ashamed of nothing, offended by everything. I got a super chat from Letco again. Good evening, Bill. A great depiction of a man of decisive action is James Cagney in 1, 2, 3. I don't want to open the wrapper. I want to have it in mint condition. I want to see the movie desperately, but I don't want to take it out of the original packaging because it'll reduce the value so much. Well, at least I've got some time to do things like this now, anyway. But back to that. That's really what it is. It's like there is the ability to control your emotions is how you have civilization. And if you can't control your emotions, then you can't be civilized. And I would like to talk to somebody about this. I would have liked to talk to Dr. Peterson, but I don't think he's decided to take the Daily Wire's request for an interview regarding Empire of Terror. I haven't heard back about it anyway. But it'd be interesting to find out. I'll find some other psychologists who can tell me whether or not this is irreparable. In other words, if you don't know how to control your emotions by the time you're 8, are you? Is that for life? I don't know. Saw an interesting tale of macaque. Sometimes monkey behavior is interesting. And these were out in the wild. This wasn't one of these horrible experiments or anything. But there's this one juvenile macaque, basically just becoming a juvenile macaque, and couldn't stand to be separated from mom. And then mom got captured and taken off to a monkey reservation or something. So this juvenile is there all alone. And even when his mother was there, he did nothing but scream and howl all the time, just constantly, just a fear, mom, just all the time. But once she was carted off, this monkey just stopped, just cried nonstop for 3 days, and had been doing so for its entire life for almost a year. So it wasn't a child monkey, and the narrator was saying, you could see all the other adults saying, "We've had enough of this now. It's been a year of this. We've had enough of this." And so this juvenile monkey is just howling and screaming and crying, and then all of a sudden, it's absolutely quiet. It's just sitting there, and it's just absolutely quiet, not making a sound. And you're looking at this, so something happened. And the thing turns around, and it's got a gash, like from here to here, where one of the adults finally just said, "You know what? We've had enough of this." The teeth on a male macaque are like freaking horrific. And one of the monkeys, or a group of the monkeys, pounded the snot out of that little monkey, and that's all it took. That's kind of my point. It didn't turn it down. It didn't reduce it. It just stopped it instantly. And I don't know. You got to be careful about how you say these things because I don't wish harm on anybody. But from a sheer societal, experimental perspective, I am curious to know whether a good pop in the mouth would shut up some of these people, you know? So we're getting eclipse questions, and now I have to be the bearer of bad news, which I was going to get to, and I'll do it now before I forget. Astronaut says, "Hi y'all, where's the eclipse spot?" The eclipse spot was, as I said, was going to be in Fort Worth, Texas. It's still going to be in Fort Worth, Texas, but I'm not going to be there because it is forecast now, and we're just a few days out for solid overcast. The front came through here either yesterday or early this morning, and it is heading that way. And now, being only a few days away, 4 days away from the eclipse, the forecasts are solid, and it's severe clear until Sunday. Sunday is the 7th. That's my birthday, and then the night of the 7th, this front comes into Texas, and it's rainy and cloudy for 4 or 5 days. So as I mentioned, when I heard that the weather was looking like it might start to, bag on us, I started doing the calculation in my head, and that is which would hurt more, not driving for 50 hours and then finding out that it was clear, or driving 50 hours to see the clouds get dark, which I can see pretty much every day. It's not an exaggeration. It's 22 hours direct from my house with no traffic to where we were going, and there were reports of tremendous, traffic jams and all the rest of it. That's 45, 46 hours of driving. And now this I really do want to address, because Asa Fendi says, never underestimate Texans' ability to defy a weather forecast. There is obviously always a chance that it will be clear. It's just that the chance is poor. And if I'm going to miss the eclipse, I don't want to be in the path of totality and miss the eclipse. Chance not to go over likelihood is a very Spock thing to do. Well, if it were me by myself, I might just do it because 48 hours, 50 hours of driving is good for me, clears the head. But my wife loves to drive, but the idea of, we were going to rent an RV, we'll do that later in the year. We'll go someplace else in a little RV someplace. But it's a long, long, long way. And it also means being gone for 5 nights. And I'm a little worried about being so. I'm afraid I'm going to have to bail on this one. And that means, we had the Strata Cruise got sunk by COVID. The Strateclipse got sunk by weather. We're going to have to do something indoors that we have some control over. Iceland, there's one in 26 or 27 supposed to be really good in Greenland. I want to go where people aren't. That was the thing about the one in 2017. Now we flew in a private airplane, but it wasn't like we flew our Learjet up to Nova Scotia to see the total eclipse of the sun. But I don't really need the idea of flying in, even if the flights have been available, and they hadn't been for quite a while now, and having it be something the equivalent of 4 Thanksgiving days rolled into one. I'm just not. There are other eclipses, and I'm very, very disappointed. When the eclipse ended in 2017, my first thought was, okay, only 7 more years to the next one. So I am very sorry to say that we had to make a decision, and I put it off as long as I could to see if there was a chance. If it had said partly cloudy, I would risk it. If it wasn't a front, I would risk it. If it was just going to be like, okay, it's been sunny, then it's cloudy. But it's not it doesn't appear to, at least not here anyway, as it came in. This is not like it's going to be a cloudy day. It's socked in. And I don't need to drive 50 hours just to look up at the sky and know what I'm missing, you know. And I don't think I'm the only person, by the way. I don't know what the estimates were, but it was millions, tens of millions of people planning to go to this thing. A lot of the country is going to be socked in. Parts of it look good. I think Ohio looks good, but it's the path moves northeast, so it's moving away from where I'm driving from, and I'm just not liking it. So. EM Man says there's severe weather possible for some of the path of totality. Yeah, FCS. I agree on the FCS part. It's just awful, and I would have felt better if the front had come in 3 days earlier, but for it to come in, 6-10 hours before the eclipse, that just seems mean. So if you're going and you go to Texas. I held off on that as long as I possibly could. Now, my friend Phil's going to Texas. He's on his way now, as a matter of fact, and he and Bobby, his wife Bobby. But they had planned on the eclipse, and then they planned a bunch of other things and a bunch of other campsites. They're taking a 5-week vacation in Texas, so they got to go there anyway. It's possible that he'll get lucky, and I'll be sitting here, and he'll say, "Man, there it was, just hole in the clouds," and I mean that can happen. But I'd rather deal with that than deal with driving 50 hours to have clouds. I think that would break my heart, to be honest with you. So Natasha and I are going to do something she's always wanted to do. We're going to Sedona. Her birthday's on the 6th. That's Saturday, and mine's on the 7th. I've never been to Sedona. She really wants to go see the Painted Desert, so we're going to hop in the car. We'll do a 2-day vacation instead of a 5 or 6 day. And once again, I'm really bummed out about not being able to get to meet and see a bunch of you guys. But if you think about driving to California from Texas, you get the idea, So I hope I hope that I get the little disappointment. I don't want people to not see it. I hope it clears, and then I can say, well, if I'd gone, But given the weather conditions, it's not like I'm going to be beating myself up over this one, because it's not like it's 50%. If it was predicted to be 53% clear for months, and I thought I'll take those chances definitely, but not this, I don't think. Lapko says he's in Oklahoma City and took Monday off just in case. This time of year, this region's is a weather crapshoot. Forecasts mean nothing. I tend to agree about the forecast too, but again, frontal systems, especially a major front, because this one is cold. Steve Green on our backstage show said this is the first time in 40 years that Colorado has not had a day in the 70s. It has not cracked this. He said one day it got to 69, but they're already in first week in April, and they haven't had a day in the 70s in Colorado Springs, where he lives. And this is a front. Even in Sedona, Arizona, it's going to be 30 degrees at nighttime. Daytime's going to be 54. That's 47. That's cold for the desert. Well, desert can get pretty cold, I guess. Anyway, I hope we can do something where we have control over the environment and see what happens. Anyway, so yeah, I'm very bummed about that, but I've been slowly easing myself into it over the course of the last 3-4 weeks or so. So I held on as long as I could, because I was planning on going, and I really would like to have. Anyway, back to what we were talking about, and that lack of emotional control. I don't really know what to think about that. What happens when you have law-abiding people, generally law-abiding people, and then they have a crisis, and then they completely freak out and become 4 years old? What do you do about that? I don't know. Roadrunner says, if I want to control the environment, watch the eclipse in a planetarium. I've done that more times than I could tell you. It's not quite the same effect. We have a super chat from Whittleton saying, sorry for being late. Shay Diversity did a video earlier explaining how YouTube is killing his channel, and it reminded me of you and Zoe. Please stay with the fight. We are here and we are winning. We are winning, actually. Thank you, Climate Mange. Oh, that's very clever. That's from PGTM R2 or PGT Mr. 2, if you like it. Climate Mange. That's bloody clever. Congratulations, sir. So far, you're well ahead of the pack for the evening. So, what do you do with these with this? I don't know. But the toxicity, that's the term, the toxicity of this, of much of Generation Z is really shocking. And it all seems to be, 90% of it seems to be embedded in women. And I think that's really the issue. I think this is what feminism has done. You see these little twists of girls that weigh, 80 pounds soaking wet, mouthing off to cops, telling them to go F themselves and saying, I hope your family dies. I hope somebody shoots you. I hope you this kind of thing. Just begging to get, just a smack. And I'm wondering why the rage and hostility from so many of these young women. Why the screaming at the top of your lungs, Trump derangement syndrome rage. Why are they that emotionally out of control? It's not like they don't like Trump or anything. It's that they're absolutely reduced to children, screaming at the top of their lungs. That's all they can do. And these are not just Gen Z people. These are mostly grown women. And why? And I think it's because feminism has told them they don't need men, so they haven't had any men. And so they don't feel protected. They substitute the government for dad or for the husband in terms of helping provide and the cops and the gun control and all the rest of this stuff. But I think that they all have just plain not had any kind of a rock or an anchor in their life. Most of them didn't have fathers, from what I can tell of the ones that I see. One of the most and the level of education is so low, but mostly what I'm seeing and I'm talking about suburban kids now, right? Suburban kids, upper middle class suburban kids, almost exclusively young women. They're unbelievably toxic. They're unbelievably angry, and they're unbelievably mind-bogglingly vulgar. And that's the only word I could come up with. The language they use, and not just the language, not just the actual words, but the intent of the words, You see some 23-year-old girl getting arrested for, blowing 2.021 on the breathalyzer. She's 4 times over the legal limit. Somebody's putting her in the back of the car, and she says, I hope you and your children die of cancer. I hope you die. I hope somebody shoots you. That cop who got shot a week ago, I wish that was you. Just on and on. I just, this is bile. And I think that obviously it's lack of church and a lack of spirituality, but it's mostly just a lack of security. People start talking tough like that. People start acting real hard when they're scared. That's what people who do the big trash talking do, is they're scared. And they're trying to keep you away by convincing you that you're somebody not to be messed with. Sorry, here's another super chat here from our, this vision's getting I'm just going to have to either do this or laser. From R. Valera, thank you. Even if Trump wins, do you think New York City will be turned around? No, I think New York City and California will lag behind everywhere else until they have no choice. Things have to get bad. This is how it is for progressives and liberals. Things have to become unlivable, and then they hold their nose and vote for a Republican. Then everything is great, and so it's not going to be turned around peacefully. New York's going to turn into what New York was back in the 1970s and early 80s before Giuliani came around. It's going to be the nation's #1 murder capital, and all of these buildings are going to be smashed. The windows are going to be smashed. They're going to go right back to where they were, and that's what they voted for. That's an interesting question. I'll get to that in a minute, if I can remember. I've been trying to think of a way to put this. I'm not looking for a politically correct way to put it, because I don't really give a damn about that. the problem with the society is, and by the way, one of the things that's most outrageous about these body cam videos is you see these people who are blind drunk, driving without a care in the world. When they're pulled over, there's not a moment of, oh my God, I could have killed somebody. It's all, why are you ruining my life to the policeman? Go after yourself. And and it's just so unbelievably annoying and toxic and all the rest of it. And I guess, oh, what was I going to say about this? It was, well, it's intentional. One of the things that's out there a lot too is the Democrats, and this is, you can blame, you don't get to blame the Democrats on the budget. They're the ones who are pushing for more spending, but there have been Republicans in Congress, and we've been voting for legislators since the budget got out of control in well, really at the end of the '80s. So, but when you get to things like this race hatred, this is the Democrats and Barack Obama and all of these Marxists who have now spent so much time talking about white supremacy that when black people get arrested for shoplifting with the items in their hands, they're talking about you. Every single other word out of their mouth is, you white crackers, bitches, you white crackers, you white crackers, you white supremacists, you white crackers, you white people. I hate white people. I hate white people. This, all your white supremacists, just on and on and on. And it's like, congratulations, you've been given cover by the president of the United States, has come out and said, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's all the result of all of these evil white people that made you go and steal this stuff. And the police are bending over backwards to be nice to them and not arrest them or to hear their story. Nope. And you wonder, well, why are they rushing into stores and smashing windows and closing down entire malls and cleaning out Apple stores and stuff without any fear of consequences? Why would they? What's happened? Well, they were told in summer of 2020 they could smash as many stores as they wanted to, take whatever they wanted to, and not only would there not be any consequences in terms of law enforcement would be there to make sure that nobody on their own held them accountable. I think it was David Booty who said, I think it was our David Booty, I wrote it down, it was just so good. The government won't enforce the laws, but they will arrest the people that try to. Yeah, that's the world we live in now. Yeah, and it's so deep now. I don't know if you've seen the video of oh, come on, what's his name? LeVon Burton. Something tells me I got that name wrong. LeVar, sorry, of course, it's LeVar Burton, who I watched in Roots. I don't know if anybody's seen this video. It's really quite amazing. He is sitting there in a chair. It's kind of like a To Catch a Predator moment. And LeVar Burton is waiting to get the results of his genealogy back. And LeVar finds out that he has a large percentage of his genetic makeup is white, and they were able to trace it back. And they were not only Confederates, they were Confederate slave owners. And the look on his face when he found out that he was descended from white slave owners was interesting. So, I was supposed to be doing a Doomcock thing later on tonight, and we got our signals crossed about what we were supposed to be doing. I had told him that I was putting together the OK Boomer's Guide to what is and what is not Star Trek, and I wanted to talk about that. And somehow or another, he and I together made a mistake where we thought we would both be reviewing the first episode or two episodes of season 5 of Discovery. I've never seen a season of Discovery. I don't have Paramount Plus, but I was thinking about that quite a bit today because I was getting ready for it, and I realized, among the many differences between the first of the Star Treks and the last of the Star Treks, the first one is that on with Captain James C. Kirk and Starship Enterprise, in this exact moment, this is one of the many reasons why I like this here. Jim Kirk is afraid here, but he has to control his emotions. He can't just cry and he can't just run away because this thing has got more endurance than he has. He's going to have to fight him. And so he has to basically control his emotions, think, and act. And that's why I love these cutouts so much. That's why I made them. Because I think this is the high point of what Western civilization is. And by the way, this episode is not really about technology. This episode is about mercy. And really, it's ultimately what it's about. You got this brutal enemy who is going to kill you, spends the entire episode going to kill you. You use your advanced mammal mind instead of the reptilian, and you blow a hole in him by shooting diamonds at him through a bamboo cannon. And then you're expected to finish him off, and we don't. We show mercy. And that's when the people that arrange the fight in the arena say, "Oh, you humans are interesting after all." That's one of the fundamental differences between old Star Trek and new Star Trek. Old Star Trek didn't hate humanity. Old Star Trek thought humans were cool and recognized that we have some problems, but, that we were fixing them and that they could be fixed. And of all the things I want to talk about, and we'll get this later, I'm not going to make too much about this, especially on a Thursday night. But the thing that really separates the two series, in addition to, just about everything. I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to think of a politically correct way to put this. So to put it non-politically correct, pretty much everything about Star Trek Discovery is just really gay. And I don't mean homosexual. I mean it's just gay. It's just those first season uniforms were just a little too fabulous, and the I just find the whole thing to be just unbearably female centric. I think that's the main problem with our society is it's just way too feminized. If you want to look at an overly masculinized society, Nazi Germany will do you just right. But an overly feminized society is where we are now, and everything about Discovery is about the feminization of it. I remember what it was I was going to say. I saw a YouTube video featuring trailers for the next 6 science fiction fantasy movies. And not only are every one of them led by female characters, female warriors, female explorers, but there are no white males in any of them. There just aren't any. There's not a white male even in the backup. So the science fiction audience is, I don't know, 70% straight white males, but we're not represented anymore, and so we're not visible. So we don't have representation. And, what do you want to say about that? It's just intentional. It's designed to write you out of your own history. My right angle, which I'll be putting up later on tonight for tomorrow, is called A Slap in the Face. And it's because, no matter how religious you are, certainly not a regular church-going Christian, but when Gavin Newsom comes out on Easter Sunday and says, on this most special of days, we want to celebrate trans visibility, I just really got quite angry about that. White males are gone. They don't exist in the culture anymore. They're as Lady Hawk points out, most commercials feature black males with white females, but there are no white males, and there aren't certainly not any white males that aren't either villains or idiots. This whole thing. So this is what Star Trek has become. I did notice. I'm not going to watch the episodes, but I did notice that I saw the trailer for the 5th and final season of Star Trek Discovery, And the final shot of the trailer is Michael Burnham, Space Jesus, crying. That's the last shot. That's what they're going out on the trailer. Not crying from sadness, which is understandable. Crying from just an overflow of love for her fellow crewmates. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, Star Trek's about exploring strange new worlds. It's not about exploring your feelings. You can do that in Santa Monica. You know, you don't have to go to Deneb 5 to explore your feelings. And that's what it all is. It's all about your feelings. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Very kind of you to say. And so that's really what the show has become. It's become all about feelings. This woman, was it Tig, or this lesbian stand-up comedian, you know, basically saying to the captain, you know, or to Pike, the character, or whatever, I'm going to kick your ass or something, sir. You know, it's like, that's not how it works. This is the thing, you know. It's like this is. So the term I came up with is that there's too much yang, no yin, too much yang. Tig Notaro. Yeah. There's no yang at all, and so everything's about emotions. And the Starfleet logo, which, I mean, that thing. By the way, just look at the geometric perfection of that. That is the most graceful and elegant design I've ever seen. NASA would kill to have a logo like that. That asymmetrical arrowhead with the star it's not just iconic. It's not even just beautiful. It's just perfect. It's perfect. It's elegant. It's Star Trek. It's elegant. The Enterprise is an elegant ship, and that's an elegant logo. Well, somewhere around season 2 or 3, they went, and this is a really interesting point, by the way. Road Rider says it's moving. It is in motion. That's in motion, and we know which way it's going. It's going up. That's in motion. What they've done on Discovery several seasons ago now is they've changed the Starfleet logo. Now it's an oval. Now it's nice and round and feminine. It's got no direction. It's got no pointy edges. It's just an oval. It's an oval with something that looks roughly like that in there. One of the other things they did was they took those Star Trek vector and they split it. So there's two halves. So we're not united. It's not the United Federation of Planets anymore. Now it's the oppressors, and now it's the victims. And keep on doing that. The new logo is it just might as well be, you know, like we're all little eggs, just eggs. We're all a bunch of little ovum, whatever, and of all the things I think that bothers me the most is, well, the thing that bothers me second to most is the whole meta thing. You know, they can't take it seriously because fundamentally the people who are in charge of Star Trek now hate Star Trek. They hate the idea of exploring strange new worlds because that requires initiative and courage, neither of which they have, and flexibility and intelligence. Again, they're short on all these things. So they can't help themselves but to comment on the show in order to break the fourth wall so that the writer and the director and the producers of Star Trek Discovery let you know that they're not taking this junk seriously. And a great example of this is where I think on first season or second season, where one of the like the helmsman or woman or the helms thing, whatever, is saying science is so cool. Can you imagine Mr. Spock saying that? You know, Captain, we're picking up Mr. Spock. Are we able to read what's going on the other side of this nebula? Captain, we're experiencing time dilation waves, you know, and boy, science is cool. That people don't talk that way. They just don't. And this whole, you've got this, you know, It's like it's just like Mr. Sulu, come left a 147 Mark 25 and on my mark, kick it into warp 6. And and Chekhov doesn't lean over and go, "You got this. You can do it, Sulu." Of course he can do it. That's his job. He's what he gets paid for. It's annoying on every single level, but ultimately the thing that's the worst about it is just how egregiously lazy it is. The whole idea of Star Trek Discovery is there's I've never been able to get deep enough into it to understand the nuances of it because, first of all, there aren't any nuances, and secondly, it makes me physically sick. But Discovery is an experimental ship. It doesn't use warp drives the way that the Patriarchy does. This uses spore drives, which are not physical. They're not a product of physics, not white male physics like warping space using energy. It's a biological thing. It's a spore drive. Turns out there's all these little connections throughout the galaxy of living things. It's kind of like the Force. And one man has to step into a room and he can tap into this stuff and then he can travel instantaneously from one point to another. And in order to do this, the entire spaceship has to go, and I just want to scream. The feeling drive. Perfect. Thank you, Road Rider. I'll use that. It's the feeling drive. I feel like going over there. How are we going to get there? Well, we'll leave it to this guy and his husband, and he'll feel his way there. Okay. There you go. There we go. Now we're making it. Liveco says, too many girl bosses, not enough green Orion slave girls. Precisely. It's too yin. Yeah, well, Strange New Worlds buried Discovery, but Strange New Worlds had an episode where they had a musical where something took over and had everybody break into songs. So Strange New Worlds, you can kiss my butt. And the Spock on Strange New Worlds looks like a barista. He looks like he works at tech support, like in Geek Squad or something. Leonard Nimoy was cast as Spock because Leonard Nimoy, the human being, was a bizarre looking individual. But ultimately, the spore drive is lazy. And having the Enterprise do that, the Discovery is lazy. And everything about it is lazy. And having her be the secret sister of Mr. Spock, raised on Vulcan, right by his side, is not only lazy, that's an admission that they can't write anything, and they know it. So we'll put the Star Trek name on it, and everybody will go and watch it die. Amy Thompson says, is everybody gay on the ship? I don't know. It sure looks like it. I don't know. See, the thing about the original Star Trek was, in fact, see, this is the thing about conservatives. This is the business. Now you start to get to the point where you start talking about conservatives are basically people who are trying to preserve classical liberal values. Because the 1966 Star Trek was, in fact, notable for its diversity. You had, the first time ever in history, you had a black person, who was really competent at what they do, although Bill Cosby and I Spy might have been right around that. I think Bill Cosby was probably first. But she wasn't hired because she was black. She's on the Enterprise because she's the best communications officer in Starfleet. And you had a Japanese helmsman. And you got to think about this, in 1966, so we're talking 21 years after we finished fighting the Japanese. Just having a Japanese face on TV would do an awful lot for the Greatest Generation to, start getting their blood pressure up. And after one season, we don't just have a Japanese guy who we've just been fighting. Now we're going to have a Russian guy on board who we're fighting right now. And we're going to like him, and he's going to be part of the team. That's genuine diversity, It's and at no point did anybody's sexuality come up at all, except for Kirk, who had to, he had to do what James T. Kirk, the Starship Enterprise, does. But seriously, it was not about relationships. You didn't hear about McCoy's wife, and spend a lot of time on on this. And if it turned out that even as a little boy, if somebody told me, I didn't even if you told me before I knew what gay meant, if somebody told me that Sulu was gay, I would have said something like, well, he sure does wear a lot of mascara for a guy, frankly. First interracial kiss, yes. That when Kirk kisses Uhura in Plato's Stepchildren, significant number of TV stations, mostly throughout the South, just cut away. They just cut away from the show. Amok Time is Amok Time is not about relationships. Amok Time is about emotional control. Amok Time is about what happens when the most emotionally controlled individual on the ship loses the ability to control his emotions. So I just, well, some of the shows were just terrible. There's no question about it. But they were different. And one of the things I realized thinking about this was the reason that they have the holodeck in Next Generation is because by that point the Federation is so safe that you have to play make believe if you're going to want to go up against Romans or gangsters or whatever, you know. Even I mean, look, when they would make a show like Patterns of Force, which was the Nazi planet, or Piece of the Action, which was the gangster planet, which was hilarious, or what was the one with the Romans? One of the reasons they did that was because it's a studio show and they've got essentially free rental of, you know, here's 24 Roman uniforms. Let's write a show so we can save some money on our costume budget. Bread and circuses, thank you. So we go to a planet where the planet has developed along these lines. In the case of Patterns of Force, I don't think in Bread and Circuses, but I do think in Piece of the Action. So 2 out of 3. They went Nazi or they went gangster because they'd been visited by other Federation ships. And that's actually the last thing I want to say. I want to get on to questions. But this is ultimately the biggest of the differences between these two shows. And it's really quite shocking. The Prime Directive is the most tyrannical, awful piece of legislation ever written into any kind of fiction. The Prime Directive, for those of you who are not even remotely interested in Star Trek, the Prime Directive came in late and it basically said you're not allowed to interfere with the culture's development. It has to develop on its own. The reason the Prime Directive was put into an episode was because we needed the drama of Kirk having to debate about whether or not he's going to break the law in order to interfere with the growth of these cultures. So the classic example is the Apple. Okay, this is what's different between 1966 and 2024. In 1966, you got this episode where they got this cheesy snake head, reptile head supercomputer, and a humanoid species, including David Soul from Starsky and Hutch, live in this perfect world. It's Eden. That's why it's called the Apple. It's Eden. No one gets sick, no one gets old, nobody dies. There's no murder, there's no theft. Everybody shares. Everybody's kind. Everybody's they're children. They're children, and all they have to do in order to maintain this lifestyle of perfect health and longevity and happiness and no want whatsoever is they have to feed this machine. They have to just pour matter into this thing. Okay, so what they are is they're slaves. All of their needs are taken care of. All of their medical needs are taken care of. They're completely taken care of. They're not whipped, but they're not free either. So you've got this Eden, and Kirk has to decide whether or not he's going to put an end to this Eden. And it's spelled out for him in no uncertain terms. If you destroy this machine, Baal, I think it was, or Val, but we all know what that means. If you do this, then you're condemning these people to murder, rape, sickness, disease, cancer, all of it. The whole bag of worms, the whole Pandora's box is going to open, Jim, if you do this. And are you sure you want to do this? And he doesn't have to think about it, because because they're slaves. And he says, this is not what being a human is about. We're not pets. We're not pets. We're not cogs. Kirk basically decides to play God and give them free will because they don't have free will. And he gives it to them, which means that America gives it to them because the Enterprise is America. And so you've got these enslaved people, and these sky gods from America come in, and they basically give them freedom, including the freedom to murder and kill and do all these other and get old and die and all the rest of it. And he doesn't hesitate. It's not like he has to weigh this thing. Kirk has an innate moral repugnance to seeing human beings in bondage. He doesn't have to think about it because he knows it's wrong. And the country knew it was wrong, and the culture knew it was wrong. And now you get to a world where ball shot first, Road Rider, you're on a roll tonight, buddy. Now you get this world where, okay, so we're going to legislate slavery. That's what the Prime Directive does. We're going to legislate your slavery. That's a sign that when the Prime Directive, I think the author who first used the Prime Directive, I don't remember which episode it was on, and somebody will tell me, but I think the first person to write the Prime Directive in there did it specifically for the dramatic purpose of having Kirk have to face a moral dilemma that involved him actually breaking the law, not just making a decision, to raise the stakes. But when the Prime Directive became a thing, that's when you can tell that the culture no longer believed in itself. That's when the whole Vietnam thing started to get into it, because what the Prime Directive says is exactly what the Prime Directive says is, who are we to say that our culture is better than theirs? Who are we to say? And therein is the birth of cultural relativism. Who are we to say that we're better than the Aztecs just because they spent their entire civilization roaming the perimeter of their empire, rounding up hunter-gatherers so that they could execute 80,000 of them over a 4-day weekend? Who are we to say that we're better than them? Well, I am. I'm here to say that we're better than them. He's here to say that we're better than them. But now, no. Jean-Luc Picard saying, no, we're going to go in there, we're going to free these people. Oh, Jean-Luc, are you saying that we have the ability? He's completely down with it. Your thinking sounds strange, friend. Are you not of the body? Was that from Return of the Archons? That's a great quote, by the way, Lapko. So, what do you do? And all of the analogies are so obvious, but I mean, think about. So, look, for those of you not down on the backstory here, in the original Star Trek episode, the original series, the Enterprise is a ship it's the USS Enterprise, United Starship Enterprise, but the Federation is America. The Klingons are the Russians, and the Romulans are the Chinese. And that's how it's played out. Think about the Klingons. What is it about the Klingons? They're very strong. They're very tough. They're warlike. They're always on the march. They're aggressive. Their tech isn't as good as ours, but they make up for that by just plain sheer willpower. They're a force of slavery and conquest, and we are at war with them. We're not their friends, and we shouldn't be their friends. The Federation says, if you'd like to join the Federation, we'd like to have you. But the Klingon Empire says, you're going under the sword. And then we'll take you and make you slaves in our dilithium mines. And then the Romulans are supposed to be inscrutable. We knew nothing about China. That whole Nixon opening up China in 1972 was 3 years anyway, after Star Trek ended. So you've got this mysterious power over there, and we don't know much about them, and they are inscrutable, and and they've got this this tech which is very small and primitive looking, but they also have this big freaking stick too, and there was no question that the Federation was better than the Klingons and better than the Romulans, and they came out every week and said that. This episode, humans are better than the Gorn. Why? Is it because they're smarter? Well, yeah. But they're also morally superior because this guy spared that guy's life and this guy spent his entire time waiting to put a knife into that guy's throat. So the humans are better. The humans are better. The Federation is better. The Americans are better. It's two different cultures, and this one's better. Because it is. Because it is. This is provable on its face. In our culture, if you want to be a fundamentalist Muslim, you can be. In their culture, if you want to be anything, in Sharia countries anyway, in Iran, for example, if you want to be anything other than a fundamentalist Muslim, you can't. That's better. We're better than they are. Just say it with me, we're better. And this is intolerable to the people who can't stand this country because we're basically better. This is one of the things I noticed about all of this white supremacist stuff in the body cam videos. You see this woman, this young black woman who's like, you white, you think you do anything you want to because you're white, you think you're white, you're just because you're white, you're white, supremacist, white, white. And then every now and then, every 10 minutes or so, she'll slip a little bit. She'll basically say, you think you're so much better than we are. And it's like, nobody said that. You said that. You said it. And that's where the rage comes from. Is that unwillingness to let go and just join the party. This is the Palestinian attitude, and it's the Russian attitude as well. It's like, we're all out here doing well. You just can't handle the fact. You can't give up. You can't give up. You lost, but you can't give up. Vietnam is an interesting example, by the way, of somebody who did join the party. We fought the Vietnam War to stop communism, and we won the Vietnam War. And the reason we won the Vietnam War is because our objective was to push the communists back behind the, I don't know if it's the 38th parallel, whatever the boundary between North and South was. When we left the war, when the war was ended and we signed the peace treaty, they were back behind the line, and South Vietnam was still a free country. We won the war. We lost the peace. And so they got their communism, and 7 million people fled the country. God knows how many boat people died, and the re-education camps and the murders and all the retribution. All of this for what? All of this so that by the time we get into the 90s, they are dying to join the world of capitalism. And now Vietnam is pulling itself out of poverty through manufacturing. It's taking a lot of jobs from China. When I buy something that says made in Vietnam, it makes me happy and proud and makes me want to tear my hair out and weep at the same time. Like, all of this fighting, all of this death on both sides, and now you realize what we were trying to save you from, and now you just want to make money and get rich and live a better life. That's what you were fighting about. Yeah, we have to have. There's a lot of talk going on as we record this about a new, the new drinking game card. It used to be when anytime I mention arcade, you'd have to drink. Now it's body cam videos. I'm sure we can put together a new card for these things. But yeah, so all of these, and nearly 60,000 Americans killed, enormous numbers of Vietnamese killed because of their frickin' theory and then the guy with the theory dies, and then the thing collapses. Same thing for Cuba. They're still driving Studebakers in Havana. They're driving 1957 Studebakers because they can't get new cars because this guy had a theory, and he inflicted that theory on his country for 70 years, and made them Stone Age poor, where they're having to boil rocks for soup. And he dies with 800 million US dollars in his personal bank account. And this happens again and again and again. And these idiots keep convincing themselves that this is better. So, there you go. Died of a theory. 100 million people, 200 million people died of a theory. Ooh, Ladyhawk Castro, Castreau. There's a lot of talk about whether or not Trudeau is the son of Fidel Castro, and I think he probably is. Not only does he look like him, but they were together. I mean, Justin Trudeau's wife and Fidel were playing footsie at all kinds of state events, and I think she went down to visit him and all the rest of it. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Okay, the communism is strong in this one, and so is the totalitarianism, and so is the urge to power, and so is the willingness to murder. Can we get these genes out of the gene pool, please? I don't know what else to do about that. Anyway, those are basic ruminations that got us through an hour or something like that. So let's take some questions, why don't we? I was talking last episode or two about maybe doing just a daily commentary show like the folks over at Daily Wire, and some of the problems associated with that, but some of the big benefits too. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll make it things to come, but I want things to come to be written. It needs to be written like firewalls and afterburners. It's got to be buttoned down and tight. And I thought, well, maybe I could just talk about, just do a take on the news. I just call it, what's up? Hey, what's up? Here's what's up today. Idea, something to think about. Members. Jay Coulter says in the Apple, Kirk is more like Prometheus rather than God. Yes, that's right. He's not their God. He just gives them fire. Prometheus, my favorite mythological creature. I mean, Apollo is Apollo, but Apollo is an Olympian, He's Apollo. He does whatever the hell he wants to. Yes, he's elegant and learning and, reason and all the rest of it, and all the Apollonian virtues. But Prometheus, he paid. And continues to pay, apparently. And I just love the name. Okay, thank you very much for collating this Roadrunner. I appreciate it as always for all of you guys. Because we got an Ian Nolan, we got a Bro Costume, we got a Janie Waterman, we got a Road Rider, we got a Jacob Belchuk, and a Marusha Dark. My God, I've been worried about you. I haven't seen Marusha in forever. I was actually really getting concerned. We got a few here, so we'll get through this. We'll do this. All right, so let's start here with the beginning. Ian Nolan. Bill, if after the eclipse you can make it to Sedona for Monday night, our place is unoccupied and we could let you stay there. It's booked Tuesday, though, so we'd have to be out by 10 the next morning for the cleaners. Aren't you kind, Ian? I think we're coming back on Sunday night. In fact, I'm positive that we're coming back on Sunday night. Natasha was not super thrilled about driving for, 44 hours, That's each way, assuming no traffic. 22 there, 22 back. But she always wanted to see Sedona, so we're going to drive out in the SUV that she paid for, and that she got her license for, and her whole life she had dreams of being able to drive herself around, and then she'd been here for 6 years, and she just sat down and did it. So, but that is exceedingly kind. I'm just convinced that we will be out by then, but I can't thank you enough for that, and I'm sorry that we won't get it. Well, if you're there, we'll be there through Sunday afternoon probably. Back Sunday night. So we're gone Friday night, Saturday night, back Sunday night. So thank you, Ian. That's very, very kind of you. Broke college student, my favorite Gen Zer, one of the beacons of hope for the future. I'm telling you, broke college student's going to be one of the heavy lifters of the next greatest generation. I can feel it. Hello, Bill. Listen to some less mainstream right podcasts on intelligence. They give an argument that the coming competency crisis is not just from DEI hiring. The argument goes that the average IQ of the population has been decreasing over the last decades. This decrease is because general intelligence, as indicated by IQ, is highly genetic or at least heritable, and smart people are having fewer kids than dumb people. Because of how distributions work, even though the typical person is a little dumber, there are fewer very smart people who make the most innovations, yes. This leads to a drastic reduction in the competency of the top 1 to 5% of the population that runs things. Yes, and a much more drastic reduction in competency for the 1 or 2 standard deviations off of the mean. This is given as one reason for the Renaissance after the Black Death. It killed more dumb people than smart, and the genetic pool was filtered. This is given as a potential explanation for the high IQ of Ashkenazi Jews. Don't know if it's true, but thoughts. What reproductive pressures exist for high intelligence? What pressures, if any, should exist? So this is, the third rail. And this is the thing that got me my scientific racist denigration by Jeannie Ives and that whole debacle. Was a discussion that I had, among other people, with Stefan Molyneux about IQ. You can talk about anything. This is Jeremy Boring made this point, actually. You can talk about anything. You're taller than I am. You're better looking than I am. Or my kid's got, whatever than your kid. But you cannot talk about intelligence. It's just off the table. I don't have any particular problem talking about it because the evidence for genetic variation in intelligence is overwhelming, and this is why I wanted to talk about it because while intelligence is very important, it is in the nature of intellectuals to make it all about intelligence and nothing else. And the older I get, the more I realize too many Spocks, not enough Kirks. In other words, according to the data sets, Ashkenazi Jews have an average IQ of 115. That means they're damn near average. Ashkenazi Jew is a genius. 15 points above 100. If the 100 is defined as the average, then 85 points, 15 points below the average is barely trainable to do menial jobs. So my point here is I'm not going to look at lower on the scale. I'm going to look at higher on the scale than my particular genetic background. So Ashkenazi Jews as an average score considerably higher than Caucasians do. And Asians apparently score somewhat higher, 3 or 4 IQ points higher than the average Caucasians. So why is it that Caucasians run everything, invent everything, and own everything? What is that? It's not just IQ. And if you want to go through the list of the world's inventions, you may think that last statement was problematic, but it's also true. Why was China not on the moon in 1969? Why was it that China was colonized by Europeans when China has genetically a somewhat higher IQ and a much larger population? Why didn't China colonize England? These are the issues that really matter, These are the issues that matter. Thank you very much again, Lapka, with another very kind super chat. And also for you as well, I'm so sorry when I have to put my glasses on. Single cell organism 13. Thank you very much. It's very, very kind of you. Yeah, so people can't talk about this because because people think because of our friends the Nazis, these wonderful people that have made Western civilization uh, uh, have a death wish for the last damn near century now. Those miserable, filthy, murdering swine, which, by the way, is what happens when you have too much masculinity and not enough masculinity in a society. You get Nazi Germany. Um, the reason you can't talk about this is because of eugenics, is because the idea that one person or one group of people is going to be making decisions about whether or not another group of people gets to live or not. That's We fought against that idea, and we fought against the idea that you could force people into equality of outcome with communism. So America's fighting for individuality and freedom and the right to be left alone and the right for everybody to be happy and pursue happiness and live their own life and buy a house and watch football and go out and backyard barbecue. That's as good as it gets on planet Earth. Um, so why isn't it China? Why was it that Japan made a conscious decision to basically chuck their entire culture and go completely Western prior to World War II, in the 20 years prior to World War II, because they wanted the weapons that work. Now that says a lot about what the Japanese character is, how pragmatic it is. We're going to ditch our culture and we're going to become westernized because Western battleships kick our stuff out of the water. But why was it that way? Why didn't Africa colonize Europe and take white people and make them slaves in Africa? It's not about the IQ. This is my point. This is precisely my point. It's not about the IQ. It's about the culture. So there are some hardware differences, yes. But the hardware differences are significant enough to generate the real difference between cultures, and that's the software. So we're not talking about Ashkenazi Jews being 600 times faster than Caucasians in terms of processing power. We're talking about a 15% increase, and a 15% increase that does not seem to have done them a tremendous amount of good in terms of how the world has treated them. So what is it? What is it? It's obviously genetic and it's cultural. It's both of these things together. If anybody wants to say it's just genetic, they're wrong. If anybody wants to say it's just cultural and there's nothing to do with genetics, they're wrong. This is not the point. The point is here we are without question the most successful society in the history of the world in terms of overall happiness and standard of living and for the largest number of people. And it's because of the software. It's because of the software. The Constitution and that entire society of openness and freedom and cooperation that we have is software. Now, you could say that you have to have a certain amount of hardware to run that software. But what you also find is that once you get the software installed, it doesn't matter what the hardware of the box is. Every box does better with it. It's just good software. And people with much more powerful hardware refuse to run this software, and that means they're just stupider because this software is kick-ass. Kick-ass. So it's not about the genetics. It's about what you do with what you got. It's all about playing the hand, folks. Playing the hand. This is what you were dealt. Okay, this is what you're dealt. Now, you can fold, you can cry, you can cheat, you can spend the rest of your life talking about how unfair it was that you were dealt, 2 twos, a 7, a jack, and a 6. But in this game, you get to discard, This is how it works. I mean, I really genuinely think this is the best possible example for how life works and should work. You get to play the hand. Yeah, maybe some people are dealt 4 aces and a king. Some people are dealt garbage. But you get to discard the garbage and you get to draw some new cards. You're not stuck. You don't have to, the hand that you're born with is not the hand that you have to die with. If you decide you want to and just cry about how bad your hand is, then you keep that crummy hand for the rest of your life and be miserable. That's your business. That's your choice, but it is a choice. You get to play the hand. And that doesn't mean that you can turn, a pair of threes and the rest of this junk into a straight flush. It just means that you can improve it. And that's the way it is. That's life. That's planet Earth, as Zoe said, which I thought was perfect. Right? That you're on Earth now. This is how things work here. So they don't. If you're so busy bitching about how bad the hand you were dealt is, and look, there's no question that people are dealt a crummy hand compared to other people. But I don't concern myself with people who were dealt 4 aces and a king, because it doesn't affect me. I'm not playing against them. I'm playing against the house. And I can spend the rest of my life bitching about the fact that I didn't get a better hand, or I can improve my hand myself. And by the way, that guy who got the 4 aces and a king, he got his hand as randomly as I got mine. It's not like that guy cheated. It's not like that guy did it. He's just born into wealth or privilege or whatever. Okay, that's fine. Who was dealt a bad hand? Thomas Sowell, yes, and so was Ben Carson, and those are just two black men who are individuals in this, because it's got nothing to do with the skin color. It's got to do with the attitude. Booker T. Washington, honestly, Booker T. Washington, I believe, had the best character of any person who's walked this earth since Jesus. Booker T. Washington's character, his character, is just the most astonishingly noble, successful, happy, admirable. You just can't put enough adjectives on the guy. He should be on our money. He should be on all our money. And he, of course, is despised because he said, no, you're going to have to work at this. Morally, yes, exactly, as Steve points out quite correctly. You're going to have to work. You don't get it for free. Get it for free from the Great White Father. That's W.E.B. Du Bois's strategy, and the talented 10% of the black population that can handle money, as according to W.E.B. Du Bois. Give us, the black leadership, the money and the resources and the power, and we'll distribute it among the rest of our race who can't do anything. That's what W.E.B. Du Bois said. And Booker T. Washington said, no, we're going to have to start businesses. We're going to have to start our own schools. We're going to have to come into this culture as equals. Because if we don't come in as equals, we're going to be slaves forever. And the only way to get out of being considered a slave is to provide better service and a better product than what they're making themselves. And that's exactly what he did. It's exactly what he did. And so it works. And the morality issue needs to be said, not just because it's more impressive, but because they're tied together. Not only did the Tuskegee Institute have higher grade test scores than the white schools, they also had a lower illegitimacy rate. In other words, they were not just better scholars, they were better citizens. They had to be. They had to be better, because Booker T. Washington put evolutionary pressure on them and said no. And he would talk about how he would get these really bright black kids coming in the years right after slavery, and they were never born slaves. And these are the best of the best. They're going to Tuskegee. There's essentially one school in Alabama and another one in Virginia, so get a lot of candidates. And they would come to class, and they would sit there and say, "We're not going to go work the fields. We're here getting an education so that we don't have to work the fields. That's the entire reason why we're here. We're not going to go out and farm our own food, Mr. Washington. We're here to study. We don't have time for this." Booker T. Washington would just say, "Okay, well, you enjoy yourself here in the class." And he would get up and he would take off his jacket, he'd keep on his tie and his vest and all the rest of it, and he'd grab a shovel and he'd walk out the door and he'd start digging in the fields. Because the Tuskegee Institute grew their own food to save money that way. The money they saved on growing food meant they could buy more books. And furthermore, they sold that food. And that meant that they could buy kilns so they could make bricks. The Tuskegee Institute supplied most of the bricks that Southern racists used, and that's why they were so effective. If you've got a genuinely racist Southerner, and he wants to build a house that he and his family are going to live in, and he can't find any bricks that'll hold up unless he goes over to this Tuskegee Institute and buys bricks from a black man who he is convinced is his inferior. On some level, this has to get through. I'm not buying. I'm not buying bricks from those you know whats. Okay, then you can sit in the rain then. And there is no choice. You can either buy the bricks that the white people were making, the former slaveholders, or you can buy it from Tuskegee and have a house that'll last. Your decision, your choice. But when they're forced to make that choice, people change their minds. And just be better, as Steve Whoop just said. Yep. And Dave Big Booty got it. The antidote, there's only one antidote to prejudice, and that's excellence. You cannot demand respect. You have to earn it. And Booker T. Washington, I would have been honored to work a shovel next to Booker T. Washington. I'd much rather work a shovel next to Booker T. Washington and not take any classes from him than basically graduate Noam Chomsky's Golden Boy. You know? Character. It's about character. It's about attitude. It's your attitude. And so this is where the new racism is. The critical theory has basically said, has told black Americans and any people of color. People of color is an interesting term, by the way, because people of color means all the human race, the entire human species, except for white people. That's what people of color means. Every single person on the planet except for white people. It's rather disturbing when you realize what it's actually saying. But the white liberals have convinced the people of color that that everything was stolen from them, so they'll be nice and angry. And then instead of working and improving themselves and improving the hand, they're just going to go burn things down. And they'll keep voting Democrat because they will not ever become independent. Because if they become hardworking and independent, they don't have to vote Democrat anymore. That's what's going on in California. Gavin Newsom in California is in. It's not an accident. They're not accidentally driving their tax base away. They are making life unbearable for the middle class because the middle class can vote Republican. They only want Democratic controllers, meaning them, the elites, and people who are utterly dependent on the government. So they'll keep voting Democrat too. That's what the plan is. The plan is to make it untenable to have an economy in California. And so you'll say, well, my God, if the economy of California collapses, well, who's gonna get hurt in that case? Let's say that the entire middle class gets driven out of California. Okay? And the entire tax base disappears. And there is no more middle class in California. So what's left? The ruling class and the peasants. And Gavin Newsom knows which side he's on. You think Gavin Newsom would personally suffer if California's revenues were to drop to 10% of what they are now? No. He'd still get his $800 haircuts from other people who are making tons of money. He wants rich and poor. And middle class people annoy him because we live damn near as well as he does. And he's a prince and we're just, peons. I hate him so much. He really, really bothers me because he's smart. He's good looking. He knows exactly what he's doing. 100% feudal. That's exactly right, Roadrunner. It's feudal. So they want a feudal system back. There's been a 250-year lag, or not lag, 250-year gap in lords and serfs, and they want their lordships back. This is a slow motion coup by the nobility to restore nobility to the world by removing the middle class. And the way they remove the middle class is to use the power of the law to tax their money away until they vacate the premises, either move out of California or move out of the country or move someplace where they're not doing this. It's not about the rich. They're the rich. It's the rich that are doing it. This is a thought, I don't know if it was ever hit me quite this clearly, but the people who are pushing the eat the rich message are the rich. That's who's doing it. Because if they do that, they're going to create a society that is in turmoil. If rich people tell poor people, kill all the rich people, riot and burn things down, who do you think is going to be caught by that? The rich people are not going to be caught by that. They're going to stay in their gated communities with their private security. And the people who are going to get hurt are the middle class. They're the ones who are going to leave. And that's the plan. That's the plan. That's the plan. Eat the Rich, my favorite firewall video. It's one of my favorite too. And I cannot mention Eat the Rich without realizing that while I wrote the script, the data was done by Iowa Hawk, who is the funniest, cleverest, most original, and by far the brightest person in conservative commentary. He is a super genius. He makes the rest of us look like chimps. I've never met anybody smarter than him. And he's just a regular wrench-turning, get-your-knuckles-bloody kind of car guy. So, there you go. So, yes, are there genetic differences? There are. Are they deterministic? They're not. I'm not as smart as Ashkenazi Jews, and the average American is not as smart as Ashkenazi Jews. In fact, America is not as smart as Ashkenazi Jews, and I'd much rather be in America. America's the most powerful country in the world. Why aren't they? It's not all about intelligence. I could probably sum this up I want to say it was a Norm Macdonald joke. It sounds like a Norm Macdonald joke. But the joke is, the brain is the most important organ in the body, says the brain. Think about that. The mendacious something manatee of Michigan. Malevolent mendacious Michigan manatee, something that's how I described that monster. Michael Moore. Well, you want to talk about... Have you ever seen Michael Moore's face? Like, just ever... I know it's not easy, but have you ever just seen how he looks... his facial dissymmetry is so extreme. He's really not... There's something wrong with that boy, Something wrong with that boy. Anyway, Dave Burge. Yeah, Dave Burge. Genius. Okay, let's see if we can get on to some more of these questions. That'd be a nice idea. Janie Waterman, who's risen through the ranks rapidly to become one of our favorite regular commentators here, who's just got such a cheerful avatar, always smiling, and just seems to be such a nice person. Hello. I've decided to rewatch Empire of Terror from the beginning and start a notebook of questions. I hope that's okay. It's not only okay, it's deeply appreciated and admired. I love it. It's terrifying, gut-wrenching, painful kind of way, and I imagine there's a lot you learn that wouldn't fit into the series. It's honestly like I'm in a history class, and as a member of BillWhittle.com too, I get to ask the professor 2 questions a week, because it's both culture and politics, right? Thank you for all your work. You're very welcome. Thank you for the kind words. Can't wait to talk about it more with the rest of the Whittleverse. I guess there is a Whittleverse. It's shocking and amazing. That said, my question is about the presidential election, LOL. They say that there's never before been a president who's been reelected with approval ratings as low as Biden's are right now. They also say that this election will come down to the battleground states, of which Biden only leads in Wisconsin. I'm so disappointed in my cheeseheads. I suppose for the sake of an argument, I can swallow that both Biden and Trump are unpopular enough to result in close poll numbers. But Joe Biden recently refuted the accuracy of the polls. An interviewer said he's behind. Joe responded, offended with, no, he's not behind. Apparently, this is newsworthy because politicians don't make a habit of challenging poll numbers, if I understood the report correctly. So my question is the left laying the groundwork for the polls to be within a margin of error so as to be able to cheat in this election like they did in 2020? Thanks again for everything. I count myself lucky to have found this little corner of the internet. We count ourselves lucky that you have found it as well. Thank you very much. The mainstream media has always inflated the numbers of Democrats, not Republicans. The idea being that if you can convince the country that the Democrat is up by 7 the day before the election, there's no reason for the Republicans to vote since it's already over. There's no chance for the Republican to win. That's the strategy behind the poll number manipulation. If the polls are showing Biden down, it's not a question that Biden might be up. If polls are showing Biden down, then the truth is that Biden is down much worse than the polls are showing, because the Democrats will always do everything to inflate the popularity of their candidate for the very simple reason that this is a single, very powerful, motivational, psychological motivator of human beings. Human beings want to be on the winning side, and they will tend to be where everybody else is. If you saw two groups of people, now we're an exceptional little group here, but generally speaking, if you went into a door and there was a large group of people and a small group of people, most people would gravitate towards the larger group, which is why Lenin was such a genius for naming his minority party the Bolsheviks, which means the majority. It's the idiot Mensheviks, who were the majority, who said, okay, well, if you call yourself the majority, even if you're not, we'll call ourselves the minority, even if we're not. And Lenin was lucky in his enemies. So if the polls are showing Biden down, then Trump's lead is phenomenal. The question is the cheating. That's the issue. That's the entire issue. If I had not seen what I'd seen in 2020, I would have no doubt about this election at all in 2024. None. I'd be looking at it. I'd be thinking there's a fair chance he's going to do 50 state victory. But it's not, as Stalin said, it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. And when George Soros spent tons and tons of money, he didn't spend tons and tons of money on a presidential candidate, although he's done that too. He spent tons and tons of money getting radicals elected as state secretaries of state and state Department of Justice, state attorney's office. If you control the Secretary of State of the state of Wisconsin, then you can control the votes of Wisconsin. And Secretary of State for Wisconsin is not the kind of glamour job that you would normally think the national attention is focused on, which is the genius of the plan. Spend the money on these races where a little bit of money, well, a significant amount of money goes a long, long way, because they're not presidential level elections, but they determine presidential level elections because if you can control how the votes are counted, then you can control the vote. We saw it in 2020, and we saw it again in 2022 in Arizona, where Arizona took 2 weeks to count the vote, which means that it took 2 weeks for them to find enough fraudulent votes to win. They kept counting until they were ahead, and the second they were ahead, they stopped counting, and it took them 2 weeks. This, for people who deny that there's election tampering, show me the evidence. It's like, what other evidence do you need? It doesn't take 2 weeks to count votes in the modern era. It takes a couple of hours. When five states stop counting, something's going on, especially when they're the 5 states that he needs and he's behind in all of. And then you wake up the next morning and he's ahead. Well, we warned you. We said that this was going to happen, that the red wave, don't be alarmed by the red wave. There's a lot of mail-in votes. Mail-in votes come in earlier, not later. So if Trump is winning on election night, the mail-in votes have already been counted. It's not like they're going to come in the morning. It's so obvious. It's so right in front of your face. It's unbelievable. But take Arizona in 2022. Clearly she won. And clearly they just kept delaying until they could find enough votes for them to convince. They didn't need to convince the media because the media is complicit in it. They had to find enough votes for the media to be able to trump it out and say, no, this is legitimate. Here are the votes. Here we are. We can show you where they are and all the rest of it. Boom. So, yeah, now there's a lot going on in 2024 that's different than 2020. Chief among which is we are no longer going to be taken by surprise. We're no longer going to just say, oh, you're closing for the night? Yeah, we're closing for the night. Democrats, Republican observers, all of you, go home. We're going to reopen at 7 in the morning. Beer at 7. We'll start counting then. Okay. That's not happening again. when the 2022 elections happened, they asked me to come out and do Daily Wire commentary. I got on around midnight, I guess. Um, I heard in the hotel that morning, the morning of the election, that 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 counting machines in Arizona were not working. That the Arizona count was already in question because the machines that actually counted the votes in largely conservative districts were suddenly having mechanical problems. When I heard that, I felt ill. I genuinely did. I don't use that expression lightly, and I don't feel ill often. I'm pretty hardened to shocks and things of this nature. But when I heard that, I thought, oh God, it's right again, right in front of our faces again, you know. And then this Democrat official comes out on television and says, well, right now at this precinct, we've got two machines. One of them's broken, but the other one's counting with 70% either accuracy or capacity. I don't think he would have dared said accuracy. And he said, don't go anywhere else. Stay here while we work on this and getting it fixed. So the voting machines broke. You know, if there was ever a case of you had one job, right? You had one job on one day. You have one job. On election day, make sure your machines are working. Nope. That is prima facie evidence. That is overwhelming evidence of fraud. So Florida is what? Did Florida move into the third most populous state now? Third or fourth. So it's California, New York, Texas, and Florida, right? Florida counted their votes in an accurate and timely manner, and no one was contesting anything because it was done honestly and fairly. Strangely enough, California got its votes in on time too, because that was not under any possibility of contention. But when 5 states suddenly, for the first, you realize this never happened before, right? No one's ever said we're going to find out who won the election tomorrow morning. That has never happened in the modern era, ever. And then it happens in 5 states at the same time. How big does it have to be before you can see it? You know, honestly, how big does it have to be? Bill finally admits the election was stolen. Bill's been saying the election's stolen from the first day. Bill nearly lost his mind. If we're talking about this bill, I have never once ever said that the 2020 election was probably a fair win. Ever. Oh, I see. Sorry, never mind. Did I misspeak? If I did, I apologize. Anyway, yep. So he's playing with us. Sorry, Steve. I knew I could count on you. And there's our friend Wesley Bruce from all the way around the world in Australia with the super chat. Trump's big win at RNC Matters. They have brought in a shipload of lawyers and meme masters. You know, chat. Yeah. They wouldn't be doing what they're doing, trying to keep him off the ballot, if they didn't know he was going to win and win big. So in 2024, November 2024, we're going to know whether or not the system is still functioning at all. And when I say the system, I'm not talking about the voting system. I'm talking about the willingness to accept fraud while it's right in front of your face, and then just go on about it. So we'll see. If Trump wins, well, first of all, in my opinion, if Trump wins, he'll be the first person to win presidency 3 times since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But if he wins, Trump in 2016, Trump went to Washington to drain the swamp. He had no idea. I had no idea. Nobody had any idea how deep and how thick that swamp was. He had no idea that the Federal Bureau of Investigation would be weaponized against him, that the Attorney General's office and all the rest of it. Donald Trump was shockingly naive when you really get down to it, especially when you get down to guys like Fauci. The idea that he couldn't see what Fauci was, that Donald Trump just couldn't have come out and just said, wait a minute, we're on day 14 of the pandemic, and I'm standing here next to a guy who approved these gain of function researches? You're fired. He should have fired him right on the air. You're fired. His own people were part of the swamp. Yes. Many of the people he appointed were part of the swamp. Yes, all of it. And so if the election goes, I'm not even saying, notice, I'm not even saying if he wins again, because I'm positive he's going to win again. The question is he going to be elected again? If he comes off with the election, I don't think Donald Trump is going to go to drain the swamp. I think this time, second time around, I think Donald Trump's going to the swamp with a flamethrower and a serious personal grudge, which I think he's certainly earned, and I support 100%. I don't want somebody to go this time in 2024. I don't want them to go to drain the swamp. I want them to go burn the swamp down to the ground, and I want them to sow salt on the ground and then scatter the ashes to the winds. I want somebody who goes in there with a flamethrower and just plain burns down this entire corrupt. I don't want him to burn down the building. I want him to burn the kudzu off of the building. Read today that the Biden administration just put in place an edict that federal employees can't be fired with the new administration, says Jay Battis. Well, the nice thing about executive orders, first of all, it's just dictatorship. You don't get to simply sign a law. That's what Congress is for. But hey, if it turns out that that's the executive order, then if I'm Donald Trump, I would, honestly, if I was Donald Trump, I would say executive order number 1 for my new term is I am voiding all previous executive orders. Executive order number 2 is to eliminate the entire idea of executive orders. I want Congress to pass legislation saying that executive orders are on their face constitutionally unconstitutional, and there you go. Yeah, Dan Bongino for Secret Service head. Exactly. That's exactly how I'm thinking. And Josh Hawley for Attorney General. And you know, off you go. And Bill Whittle for Defense Secretary. If we don't have a defense secretary that can land a jet on the carrier, he doesn't deserve to be the Secretary of Defense. That's the way I look at things these days. Got to have some knowledge. Got to know what you're talking about. Remember that appointee for the FAA who had a vague idea what an airplane was, no experience in aviation whatsoever? Yeah, you're the new head of the FAA. Why? Well, we know why. So let's see what else we got. Yeah. And by the way, for Secretary of W, I would give serious thought to this. I really would. I'd give serious thought. Roadrunner said Secretary of War. Yeah, I think I would. I think I would push to have the Defense Department renamed back to what it was for most of our history, the War Department, because defense is such a vague and you know, it's one of those George Carlin kind of words. You know, it's not the Secretary of Defense. We have a lot of means of defending the country. This is the Secretary of War. This is the War Department. Passive, yeah, not just passive, but also it's euphemistic. Oh, we're just defending. Well, how are we going to defend ourselves? Through harshly worded letters? No, we don't send harshly worded letters. This is the War Department. We go kill bad guys. That's what we do. We do bad things to bad people, and yeah, I'd make it the War Department. And that way, when you are going to consider your options, you're not talking about the Defense Department. You're talking about the War Department. Are you willing to go to war over this? And a war, if you're going to go to war, then war needs to be approved by Congress. And if you can't muster enough support to get a declaration of war through Congress, then chances are this is not the war you should be fighting. So, yeah. Yeah, you don't have 12 carrier strike groups for defense. Exactly right. So I think Steve Whip says, I think you should make Ron Paul as VP. I think Ron Paul would be an excellent anything. I would make Ron Paul Surgeon General personally, but that's just me. That may be a misuse of his talents. Anyway, thanks for the question. We got a Road Rider, we got a Jacob, we got a Marusha, we got a Steve Young, we got a. We're running out of time here. Okay. I'm going to have to make these faster. Road Rider. Let's just say the margin of victory. I may have just answered this without even reading the question. Let's just say the margin of victory is so large that cheating just couldn't drag our weekend at Bernie's president across the finish line. Trump is elected. Question: are we, you and me, and members of all our like-minded friends really ready for the ongoing battle that begins with the certification of electoral college votes? Because if we thought the first Trump presidency was a nonstop flurry of leftist punches and slaps, the next 4 years the left is going to ratchet up the crazy. Yes, they are going to ratchet up the crazy. Good. The crazier they get, the more the middle leaves them. But it makes life exceedingly unpleasant for sane, normal people. Yes, we better be prepared because it's not a crisis if it doesn't hurt. Give a couple of new examples of how Bill Whittle would actively engage in the upcoming battle, other than the work you're doing now at BillWhittle.com. As for me, your humble road, I'll be practicing responses to Democratic family members in the style of apple-munching candidate from Canada, Pierre Poilievre. Yeah. I mean, Secretary of Messaging, we should have an entirely new federal department called the Department of Messaging, and it should have a budget of $60 billion a year. This is what I'm pushing very hard for. No. But in terms of the messaging, make people admit their evil intentions. For example, if you say, I'm in favor of, voter registration and voter ID, well, that makes you a racist. It doesn't make me a racist. You're the racist for saying black people can't get IDs. All I'm doing is I'm saying I'm making it harder to cheat. And you're saying you need it to be easier to cheat. So that's what the argument's about, is making it harder to cheat or easier to cheat, because no one is making it harder to play fair. And when you're encouraging cheating, what you're really doing is you're hurting people who play fair. So why are you on the side of cheating? I know why I'm on the side of limiting cheating. Why are you on the side of cheating? That's the kind of judo you need to do. Go right for their moral superiority, kick them in the knees, let's say, and give them nothing left to stand on, because God knows they don't have any reason behind what they're doing. They just think that they're better people because they believe these things. You're not. You're causing turmoil, you're causing ruin, and you're deeply racist and deeply insulting to either blacks or people of color by saying they're not capable of getting IDs because why? Why? Why can't they get IDs? Is it because they're too stupid? Is it because they're too lazy? Is it because they need the white man to do it for them? Where would these poor people be if it weren't for rich white liberals telling them that they don't have to worry about having an ID because we understand how incapable they are? Miserable racist bastards. I'm ashamed to be seen in the same room as you people. Jacob Belchek. Hail Bill. Hail Jacob. Been marching through Empire of Terror. It's harder to binge than I expected simply because of the horror involved. It's not bingeable. It's you need a week to scab over. Got a pretty strong stomach, but it's hard for me to look at Lenin's evil face for too long without wishing he died a more painful death. Me too. Although it was not a happy ending. Lenin suffered a lot. He just didn't suffer anywhere near as much as he did, not on this earth anyway. You mentioned Lenin saying the quiet part out loud that the institution he was building should be called the Ministry of Social Extermination. In your research, did you find a thought line of gradual corruption in Lenin's life that made him so evil? Was he just born demonic? If he was born in capitalist America to salt-of-the-earth Kansas farmers, does he still become evil? No. If Lenin had been born to salt-of-the-earth Kansas farmers, he would have been Noam Chomsky, or he would have been Michael Moore, or he would have been, Al Sharpton. There was never a point that I could find where Lenin was anything like a normal person. He wasn't the only child, but he was the only boy. He had sisters sisters and mother whose entire life revolved around Lenin. Lenin had an older brother who he worshipped, and the older brother was executed for building bombs to throw at the Tsar. It seems to me reasonable enough that if you're going to build a bomb to throw at the Tsar, you'd be executed. It goes without. It needs to be said that Lenin's older brother was offered amnesty if he asked for it. If he'd asked for amnesty, he would not have been hanged, but he refused to ask for it. So that tells you how stubborn and devoted to theory the Ulyanov family really was. There was never a moment when Lenin was anything other than. Lenin is the definition of an intellectual. He is the definition of it. He is a guy who believes that if his map says there should be a river delta here and he goes outside and looks and sees a mountain range, then he's convinced that the coastline is wrong. This is what intellectualism is. This is what worship of intelligence is. Worshipping intelligence as a prodigy, as a characteristic. Too many Spocks, not enough Kirks. This worship of intelligence as a be-all and end-all is really astonishingly stupid. It's astonishingly stupid, and this is what people. This is my Island 120 theory. This is why I believe it. This worship of intelligence, like it's the be-all and end-all. I'm smarter than you. I went to college. I've got a degree, and you don't. That kind of person. This creating a role-playing character where you roll the dice 8 times and you put all of the points into intelligence and none into strength, none into wisdom, none into charisma, none into anything. This thing is what people who are somewhat intelligent do. This is what people who know they're smarter than average people do. This is my Island 120 thing. The people who are somewhat smarter than average say the same things, believe the same things, have the same friends, know what the stupid people say, and don't say those things. They know that if you're religious, you're stupid. If you're Christian, you're stupid. They know that if you vote for Trump, you're stupid. And so they also know what the smart things are to say. Global warming is going to kill us all, and nations formed on white supremacy and all this. This is a group of people whose IQ is in the neighborhood of 100 to maybe 110, 115, something like that. And they all know they're smarter than average, but they all want to be seen as smart because that's how they identify. That's their one trait. That's it. And so they say things to put them on Island 120. They say things that make them sound like they have an IQ of 120. And this is what all the IQ of 120 people think. They're smarter than average, and they all think the same things. And that's where you end up, on Island 120. They're hitchhiking to Island 120. They're not there. Some of them are very close, and some of them are at 120. So you got all these people who are in the IQ of around 120, which is standard deviation. You know, it's just short of genius level, or you define it into genius level. They all believe the same things, and so on. But number one, because they're so blinded by their own Mensa scores, they don't know anything about anything. They have no wisdom. What good is intelligence if you cannot apply it to anything? It's theory. It's pointless. And because it's so much theory and so little experimentation and so little reality, the theories just spin off into these vapor trails that people follow as if they're real. And so they all look the same, act the same, talk the same, vote the same. But when you run into people who happen to have been, when you run into people for where 120 IQ is well in your rear view mirror, not something that you're striving for up ahead, somebody like Thomas Sowell, let's say, he doesn't give a damn what people think. Thomas Sowell doesn't give a damn what the prevailing opinion about things is. Thomas Sowell is far, far smarter than the prevailing smart opinion. For Thomas Sowell, getting onto Island 120 is not only a salary cut. It's cutting his salary in half practically. He doesn't need to think the way the herd does because he doesn't have any insecurities about his intelligence. That's what it really is about these people. They're insecure about their intelligence. They want to be seen as smart. And so they do the things that they think other smart people do, and it becomes the emperor's new clothes thing. You're surrounded by people who can see the clothes, and even though you can't see the clothes, you don't want to admit it. So you send out signals that you can see the clothes, which makes everybody else think that they're the only ones that can't see the clothes. So, no, there was never a time when Lenin was not one of these intellectuals, one of these theory-driven monsters, and what Lenin did was that Lenin created a train set that allowed him to have all the power in the world. He understood what people in Russia wanted and what they hated, and he claimed to be giving them that. We're going to have a revolution of the proletariat. Well, there is no proletariat. There are no factory workers. You got 90 million peasants, you got 1 million factory workers. You need a proletariat for communism. You don't get it in Russia. So Lenin says, well, then I have to improve on Marx. We'll have professional revolutionaries bring class consciousness to the people. So what really happened in Russia was there was not a communist revolution where factory workers did what Karl Marx said they were going to do. They were told that they needed to have a communist revolution by professional revolutionaries, but it was completely made up out of whole cloth. And not only was it not what Marx predicted, it was antithetical to Marx, who was infallible according to these idiots. ITNGRK. I always apologize when it's not a word that I can read easily. ITNGRK with a super chat says, intelligentsia simply means people who are educated beyond their intelligence. Yes. These are people. Intellectualism is intelligence that's been left in the fridge for 6 months. It's useless and it smells bad. It doesn't accomplish anything. Intelligence is the ability to recognize patterns in order to predict future outcomes. That's a valuable skill to have. It is a very powerful pro-survival trait to have. The ability to have a good idea what's coming is the single most valuable thing that a creature can have, an organism can have. If you're able to learn from what happened before and survive it and prepare yourself, then your chance of surviving it next time is better. It is highly selected for survival. But if you're not applying your intelligence to the real world and all you're doing is cranking the handle of the machine without putting anything into it or anything coming out of it, then you get what you get with intellectuals, which are people that spend their whole days just cranking their own handles, and that's basically where you are. And they think that's all there is to life. It's not. They're just a bunch of wankers. There's Marusha Dargan, Steve Young, 4 to go, I think, something like that. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. It's just good to see Marusha Dargan. If you're watching, haven't seen you in the comments for months, it seems to me. I hope you're okay. Topic psychology. Hi, Bill. Guessing you didn't get my email explaining my log absence. I didn't. It's okay. I know you've been busy towards that end. Congrats on doing the fullback, and also happy birthday to you and Natasha. I hope you enjoyed the eclipse. Thank you for 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I'd like to run something by you and tell me what you think. Something has been on my mind of late. You've often talked about the coming mental health crisis. Well, the unveiling of the current mental health crisis, but yes. And recently you have people like Matt Walsh, Chris Voss, and others deriding psychiatry and psychology as either a soft science or even an outright pseudoscience in favor of things like neurology. That's not to say there aren't problems in those fields, but it seems like actively throwing away many of the very tools that will help combat the problem. Yes, to deride psychology and psychiatry is just arrogant. It's just that just say no to drugs arrogant. It's the kind of arrogance that you get from people who have no experience with this whatsoever. It's just dumb. It's a stupid thing to say. The brain is like hardware, the mind is like software. Precisely correct. Yes, why throw away the software engineering and say, no, we're never going to ever look at the software problems. We're going to address all of it as a hardware issue. Couldn't agree with you more. And God, to whatever extent it exists, might be like the internet in this example, connecting all things together. Those who reject psychology in favor of neurology are fixated on just the hardware while ignoring the software component completely. Yes, it's insane. It's stupid. It's a stupid thing to say. It's an emotional thing to say because there's no reason behind it. You can't claim it as a rational statement. You're saying that all of the solutions must be hardware solutions when, in point of fact, everybody knows that it's hardware and software. It's as stupid as saying there are no hardware solutions. It's as stupid as saying though there are no neural issues. We should ditch medicine and concentrate exclusively on talk therapy. That's a stupid thing to say too. Somebody asked where Zoe is and so on. And well, and somebody said, well, Zoe is expensive and he's a creator and all the rest of it. We ran the course of, it was a budgetary concern. We were in a big budget crunch, which we were clawing our way out of. So that was it. But to be perfectly honest with you, just to answer this real quick, there were no more virtues that we could come up with. We did 250 virtue signals, and it was an interesting take on a discussion. But there comes a point where we both realized we were doing the same show again three times. You know, we're going to bring Zoe back. We just need to find a format where we're not quite so limited. Right angles, on the other hand, we talk about anything. Virtue signal. We came up with 250 virtues, and that's about the limit. So it wasn't just a monetary issue, and it certainly was not anything that I wanted. It was really, really tough and nasty, and not nasty in terms of the interaction. I just hated having to do it. I really hated having to do it. So we're still friends, obviously, and I can't wait to bring him back. So we'll see. Back to Marisha's question. In other words, they become materialists who worship reason at the expense of emotion, and while wondering why we're suddenly having a spiritual crisis. Yes. And there's nothing reasonable about that assertion that you need to ditch psychology and psychiatry. That's not a reasonable thing to say. At the same time, many of them will acknowledge that faith is inherently not rational and that belief is more like a feeling than it is logic. Why are they unable to see this irony? I have to say, in my opinion, I think it's just plain personal arrogance. Just plain personal arrogance, the certainty that you're right about everything. That's what I get off of those guys. Just the absolute certainty that everything I say is the absolute end, and there's no point in discussing it further because I've weighed in on it, and we all know who I am. And I just find that to be dumb. P.S. Have you had a chance to look at Dr. K's work at Healthy Gamer at all? I have not. I feel it would be valuable for you to do an interview with him and also with Brett Weinstein at some point. Here's something you can listen to in the car if you want. And here's a link. I'll click the link now. That'll show up in my YouTube thing, and then I can come back to it later. It's a 2-hour link, but okay. How to free yourself from screen addiction. That's something I could use. Because I'm not perfect. I have faults like every other human. And if you can't recognize that you can be wrong, then you're really not only not a very good thinker, you're also not a very good Christian, as I understand the concept. Hey, here's our friend Steve Young. Hey, Bill, just a reminder that Biden Executive Order 14019, once again, covering ground I talked about earlier, hopefully, from 2021, promoting access to voting, has been quietly getting out the Democrat vote at taxpayer expense by utilizing the manpower of nearly every executive agency in the U.S. government. I have no doubt of this whatsoever. The Freedom Caucus in Congress is suing in Pennsylvania over the illegality of the executive order, but that court has thrown the case back due to lack of standing, as were many of the Trump 2020 election challenges. It's good to own a Justice Department. Amen to that, brother. That's the genius of the Obama critical theory Marxist takeover. You don't need to own the government. You don't even need to own the laws. You can break whatever laws you want to. You don't even need the cover of the press. If you can decide what cases are going to trial and which ones are not, that's all you need. You don't have to change the laws. If you can select what laws are enforced and not enforced, then Congress becomes irrelevant. And the ability to have a majority in Congress to create laws is irrelevant if you have a switch which you can throw to determine whether or not that law is going to be enforced. That's the essence of the Bill Ayers, Barack Obama Marxist takeover. Don't worry about having a majority and passing laws. Win the presidency so that you can appoint the Attorney General and the Justice Department and then decide who's going to go to trial and who's not. Hillary Clinton, the evidence against her is so overwhelming. It's so monstrously. It's a joke. It's a bad joke. The abundance of evidence, it's grotesque. And you simply say, well, we're not going to prosecute that case. See, you don't even need a Congress anymore. You don't even need courts anymore. The law enforcement authorities have decided which laws people can break. That's the world we have now. That's the world we live in. Whether the will of the people can come to enough of a head to overthrow the ability to cheat so that those people can be flushed out of the system and sent to jail where they belong? We're going to find out soon enough. But yeah, and by the way, it's not just states and so. I mean, when the Supreme Court, when John Roberts is so concerned about, well, what is his legacy going to be? Well, John, your legacy is that you become a cartoon. You're a joke. You're a public opinion poll in People magazine. You have no principles, and your court has been a disgrace. For the Supreme Court to say that we are not going to handle the question of whether or not this election was tampered with is the biggest failure of our constitutional system in my lifetime, and make a case, depending on how things go, of all time. If there was ever anything that required a Supreme Court, that was it. You've got a constitutional crisis in terms of half of the country does not believe in the results of the election. We want some impartial, highly regarded. If only there was a court that was capable of making a ruling about something on the level of the presidency or the Congress. If only that existed. For them to punt on that was just plain. It wasn't just disgraceful. It was actually incredible. It was almost impossible to believe that they had the nerve to say, "Well, that's not. What does that have to do with us?" What do you mean? What does it have to do with you? What do you mean? Who's going to rule then? You're going to just let this sit there? Yep, it'll go away. No, it won't. No, it won't. You idiots. You idiots. I have when you talk about things like the Commerce Clause and the Supreme Court ruled in 1945 or whatever. Well, the Supreme Court was wrong. They were wrong. How can you say that? Are you legally trained? No. This is the entire purpose of our government. You see, it's written down in English sentences. They went to a lot of trouble to make them simple and understandable. So I know what the Commerce Clause means because I can read English. And if they were talking about Congress having the ability to regulate the lives of citizens, then they shall say Congress shall have the right to regulate trade among the people. But that's not what they said. They said among the states. I know how it works. I can read English. That's my credentials. I can read English. Period. That's all I need. I can read and understand an English sentence. That's why I can say the Supreme Court is wrong. Because of intellectualism, because there's too many Spocks and not enough Kirks. That's why. Here's Bart Hennon. Hey, Bart. Always such a charming smile on Bart's avatar. Hail, Bill. Hail to you too, Bart. It said that conservatives should listen to leftist governments to keep ourselves informed and in check. It said that conservatives should listen to leftist arguments to keep ourselves informed and in check, that our beliefs stand up to counter arguments and get outside our own bubbles. I'm a big believer in this. But every time I try this, there are still so many leftist lies, errors, propagandas, and outright lies, yes, I said lies twice, that I have to click off in about 30 seconds. Once I held out for 60 seconds, but I had a headache afterwards. How can conservatives listen to the other side without our brains blowing outwards like the movies, like the movie Scanners? Well, here's why, Bart, you just kind of answered your own question. When you started listening to leftist arguments, you immediately started to feel your brain begin to start the detonation countdown, because you could see where what they were saying contrasted with reality. They don't have this experience. If you ask them to defend the idea that global warming is going to kill us all, they will not be able to tell you why. They'll simply say, well, because the scientists said so. They won't be able to tell you why. They won't be able to give you things like, well, because carbon dioxide forces water vapor. They can't do it. You were able to blow your stack because you could see how pathetic the argument is. I've said this many times, but it's so true. When I started doing public speaking events, I spent the first 4 or 5 years just thinking, my God, I better be prepared for this. I don't want to have somebody come up at the end of this thing at a question and answer thing, have some liberal Goliath come up and just turn me into pulp and embarrass me and the conservative movement? What if I don't have an answer? What if somebody comes up with a question I don't have an answer for? And I lived in real, I won't say fear, just kind of a dread, a responsibility. Get it right, man. You're representing big ideas here. And after 4 or 5 years, Bart, I just realized I don't have to worry about this liberal Goliath, because if he was actually a Goliath, he wouldn't be a liberal. If this person was capable of constructing the kind of arguments that could change my mind, then he would already be a conservative, because that's where the truth is. So the fact that you can see what's wrong with the argument is why you need to listen to the argument. Because if all we ever did was listen to what somebody said, or whether this is what Donald Trump said, or what Bill Whittle said, or whatever anybody else said, it doesn't matter what they say. What's the reality of it? We won. So there was when I was in debate in high school, I was on the second team. We had two teams. The A team, I was on the B team, and the A team were two really good debaters, and they were they were master debaters is what they were. And my friend Willie Gomez and I were on the second team. The two guys on the A team were really excellent technicians. They understood debate is not argument. Debate is as different from argument as fencing is from sword fighting. If you've ever seen an actual, like an Olympic fencing event, you realize that's not sword fighting. It's nothing like sword fighting, not even close to sword fighting. They've got swords, and fencing is coming from sword fighting, but we're not playing for who gets to live through the engagement. We're playing for now who gets to touch the other person first. Touche. So you see these bizarre, weird moves that have nothing to do with sword fighting. Sword fighter would hack them to pieces in an instant. Same thing with debate and actual argumentation. Debate is fencing. And we had on our A team two excellent fencers. But Willie and I were sword fighters. And Willie had tremendous amount of evidence. He had great evidence, and he was a great facts guy. And I was a rhetorician. I was a rhetorician. I used rhetoric. In debate, in fencing, somebody lists a list of facts. Here's what's wrong with the system. This is first affirmative. The system is screwed up. Then first negative says, no, the system's fine. Then second affirmative says, no, here's our plan to fix this broken system. And then second negative says, your plan is ridiculous. That's fencing. Here's this problem. There's no problem at all. Here's our solution to the problem. Your solution is ridiculous, even though there's no problem. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. And so Willie would put down this evidence, this study, and that gave us credibility. And he was first affirmative or first negative, and I was always second affirmative, second negative. I was either presenting the plan. Mostly I like to attack the plan. And what I would do is I would take 4 or 5 blank evidence cards, and I'd hold them up, because all you do in debate, in fencing, is read cards. Here's this proof, here's some proof, here's some proof, here's some proof, here's some proof. And I would take those cards up there, and I'd stand in front of this group of judges who none of them really wanted to be there. It's like, and I would sit there with these cards, and I actually was almost like I probably got it from Inherit the Wind. I should have had suspenders or braces. I should have just snapped my suspenders, and just gone, now, folks, you can tell a hen from a hen house and put a dog in a dog house, but that doesn't mean the dog is a hen. One of these folksy kind of things. But seriously, what I did on a couple of occasions on this one particular tournament was I just took blank evidence cards, and I didn't pretend to read them. I just said, here's what we can do for the next 7 minutes. I've got 7 minutes of your time, and I'm burning it now. I can throw evidence cards down to match the evidence cards that they threw down, which matches the evidence cards that Willie threw down, which match the evidence cards, and so on. We could do that, and you could judge which one of us is right. But I'm going to put this down because this is much simpler than that. Does this idea make sense? Ask yourself yes or no. Just use your common sense. If we do this, will this work? What do you think? I think if we do this, then this, and this will happen. Now, that's what life has told me. What has it told you? And we won that tournament because we got past the fencing. We did it as sword fighting. We got outside of the debate. Kobayashi Maru, the thing is what we did. We reprogrammed the machine so that it was no longer a question of who stacked the most evidence cards. You'd flow the debate. First affirmative makes all of these assertions. According to theory, you need to be able to block every one of those assertions. That's what first negative does. Second affirmative lays out all of these advantages to this plan, and second negative is supposed to be able to block every single one of those advantages. And if you presumably block them all, negative wins, and if you presumably get some through, affirmative wins. And we just said we're not going to play the flowchart game. It's boring. You don't want to sit here and listen to me spout off evidence cards to contradict his evidence cards. Nobody wants to hear that. You're here to judge, so judge. Do you think this would work? Because it just sounds bloody ridiculous to me. Or, on the other hand, they've told you this won't work. I think it sounds perfectly reasonable. What do you think? And it had the single advantage. The reason we won that tournament was because it unbored the judges. We unboarded them. They'd been bored all day listening to, and somebody just sat down and started talking to them, got them involved with it. That was the breakthrough, was unboard them. They're bored, these judges. We're being judged by bored people. And whoever bores them the most is going to lose. Let's unbore them. Let's just shake them by the collar and get them in the game. And that's what we did. And that was a great day. I was very proud of myself. I was very proud of my friend Willie Gomez too. Very proud of him. And we weren't crowing loud on the way back, but we were letting the A team know. We know how you've looked down on us this whole time, and thought that we're kind of quaint and cute and stuff, but we just cleaned your clocks in there is what we did. And it wasn't even close. It was unanimous decisions, all of these things, and we just wiped the floor with you guys. One of those guys, of course, was valedictorian and all the rest of that kind of thing. So it's like, see, that's a great example. He was the valedictorian. He was the smart guy. He was the intellectual, and I was the guy using applied intelligence. So there you go. And that's all the time we have for today. That was just for you, Eric. All right, here we go. Last one for the night is the man with the hat. So the man with the hat's in the opposite night come in for a creative endeavor. Sure, why not? So, Bill, as you put together your concepts for things to come, I had a thought. Dangerous, but interesting. As you quite possibly know, Zoe's been doing some excellent covers of classic rock and roll hits. So how about you hire Zoe to do a cover of either In the Year 2525 or It's the End of the World as We Know It and I Feel Fine? Interesting thought. Either one would work well for the theme of the show. The former being straightforward, beware and be prepared for the crisis to come. That song is, I remember the first, something in Croft, right? Is it Seals in Croft? In the Year 2525. I remember hearing that song. And the nice thing about that is I was very, very young. And so that'll tell me how old I was when I heard it. Zager and Evans. Why did I say Seals and Croft? Zager and Evans. And it was 1969. So I was 10. I was 10 when I heard that song. I remember where I was. Seals and Croft. Zager and Evans. Okay, well, I'm not so inclined to 2525. End of the World as We Know It is a pretty cool song. Especially Leonard Bernstein. That's the part that everybody loves. And Eve of Destruction. The thing about things to come, I mentioned this briefly on Monday, is it's got to be, the show's a positive show. It's a hopeful, happy show. It's all about gloom and despair and ruin and crisis and all the rest of it. But it's a happy show. It's like, okay, this is what's coming. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we need to do. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to win. Now let's just get on with it. Let's just get on with it, get over it, and move to the Sunny Highlands as Winston Churchill would talk about during the war. That is going to that the day will come when we'll come out of this darkness and head to the sunny uplands beyond, or something like that. Yeah, yeah. I do like the idea of a theme song for things to come. I just don't know if it's going to be either one of those two. So there's, I might as well. Give me a second. I'll close with a piece of audiovisual. Oh my God! I just went to my YouTube page and there's a picture of me in real time. I look like a lunatic, like I'm deranged. Like I'm about to go vote for who. Hang on one second. Yeah. Let me download this. Because we're talking about music, and it was the last question, so I'll download this and then I'll use it to play us out. Come on. Okay. I played this for somebody once. Let me go ahead and get it going, and then I'll set it up as we boogie on out here. Where are you? There it is. So, theme song for Things to Come. Since this will be the last thing we do, it's probably a pretty good time for me to say that this show is made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com who are with us through thick and thin. We're getting a little thicker. Getting thicker. That's good. And I'm looking forward very much to moving it. I've got the wall mask now. I've got this wall over here that was formerly white with a big poster of Captain James T. Kirk in front of the Starship Enterprise. I'm going to paint that entire wall flat black. I've got a retractable screen that's going to come down. We're going to live project all of the stuff in Story Mechanics, so it's all real and practical with cardboard cutouts. We're not going to do it digitally. It's going to look really cool. Hang on one second. Hey, sweetheart, how are you doing? I'm still on the show. Can I call you back? Okay, baby. Everybody says hi. All right. I love you. See you soon. Okay, bye-bye. That's the call I always seem to manage to take. What the heck am I doing? I'm not paying attention. Download. There it is. Okay. So again, thanks to the members who make this possible, and then I'm going to drop this into YouTube and into Twitch, and I won't be coming back after that. So this will be our little outro. So as a potential, Stuck in the Middle with You is an interesting song. It's here it is. So I just played this for somebody many years ago, and I said, I just love this so much, it just nearly makes me cry. I just adore it. And after I finished playing it, she said, that is the most Bill Whittle thing I ever heard. So this is what I would recommend for the theme for Things to Come. You get video with it. As it turns out, now this has got video on top of it, and many of you will recognize it the second you see it. But it's got video on top of it. It's got sound effects underneath it. But the actual track is a commercial track that I can buy, and I just love it. So here we go. We'll send it out to YouTube first. This is the most Bill Whittle thing anyone's ever heard. So YouTube, here you go. And I'm going to go to black screen, and don't go away because it's going to drop it in there. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on the Stratosphere Lounge. Stay with the Switch. Don't go away. And we'll do this.